Thank you very much. Appreciate the invitation of the graciously inviting me. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for having us in here. I'm the only Venezuelan Jew who actually runs and is the president of a major Catholic foundation in Venezuela. We take care of children from the slums that come to our organization, and when they arrive, they are like scared kittens. You cannot even touch them because they scratch you and they bite you. And right there, from 2 months later, and in that moment you say, well, how can so much anger be in this little body of this little child? 2 months later, after being fed properly, after being taken care medically of any condition that he may have, dental work, eyeglasses, etc., education, and of course, tender, loving care from our staff, all of a sudden a new person appears. I mean, you could say it's a miracle. Well, it's not a miracle. It's called behavior modification. If you want to go to the other extreme, you go to the telemarketers. The telemarketers, and I'm sure some people here have experience in that, sometimes telemarketers would try to sell you something useless through an infomercial on television, and in 30 seconds or 1 minute, they actually change your mind, and they convince you to buy something that sometimes is useless. I'm not referring to you, okay? She's laughing over there. Okay. Anyway, in between those two extremes, for example, I mean, you could say, well, I mean, call it propaganda, call it indoctrination, you could even call it brainwashing. But it's all about behavior modification. And I'm sure that a lot of people here, particularly politicians, know what this is all about. Okay. The problem that we have in the world right now is information overload. There is too much information out there for anybody to actually absorb what's going on. So what has many people, particularly young people, and that's what the problem is, have chosen to do? They have traded education for information. People don't want to be educated anymore. People just want information. They want you to, a pill of Twitter that will give you the information. And that's where the radical element comes in and starts modifying behavior. Because what I'm trying to talk about is behavior modification. This is what's all about. Anti-Semitism. They have this misconception, Charles already talked about, so I won't go into any, that anti-Semitism is only a Jewish problem. It's not. It's a human right problem. The definition of anti-Semitism, people say, well, they go through great lengths, they do big studies, they do books about it. For me, anti-Semitism is irrational hate against Jews. Irrational hate against Jews. That's it. Now we go into my area, which is Latin America. What has been happening in Latin America? I believe, and this may be strong words, but I believe there's an evil experiment being done in Latin America, where people that never experienced and were never anti-Semites are being taught and are being turned into anti-Semites. And this is being done through behavior modification. Anti-Semitism, just like any other type of discrimination, exists in all societies. It's a fact. They usually is an individual, maybe it's a small group, maybe it's even an organization. The problem starts to get big when a government embraces this. If a government embraces anti-Semitism as policy, then you're in trouble. That's what happened in Rwanda. That's what happened. Any genocide has to do with that when a government adopts a policy of discrimination. Of course, when you open that can of worms, you don't know where it's going to take you. Things can really get ugly very quickly and out of hand. In my country, in Venezuela, and I should say, before I start on Venezuela, that the actual government of Venezuela, the actual president of Venezuela, Maduro, has stated that he will not allow this kind of behavior anymore. The problem is that there's a big damage that has been done in the last 10 years. And I will just go into a couple of them. Many of them, hundreds of thousands of events that happened. It exploded in 2004. All of a sudden, the community was not ready for that. We never understood what it was all about. I was born in Venezuela and I lived there all my life, and I never felt anti-Semitism from anybody. Just like I would say it's the same thing with many other Latin American countries. They're open countries. They are like light people, let's call it that way, okay? They accept. And we're never discriminated. All of a sudden, 2004, it explodes. It exploded to a point that in 2006, our community had to open an office and hire 5 professional people to monitor anti-Semitism coming from government media and government-sponsored media. Why would a community need to do that? Why would they have to go to the expense of actually monitoring their own government that is supposed to protect them? Just to give you another example, something that we're talking about today. In April 2011, while Chavez was in Cuba being treated for his first health problem over there, the head of the national radio is the equivalent of the national broadcasting in other countries. It's the official radio. It's called Radio Nacional de Venezuela. Her name is Christina Gonzalez. She did a series of programs on the protocols of the Elders of Zion, promoting them, in Spanish, of course. And actually, the book was available at book fairs that the government promoted. Also, why would a politician, for example, be demonized or be deemed not fit for public office for the fact of being Jewish? That's anti-Semitism, that's discrimination. Well, in Venezuela, it happened that a Catholic, a practicing Catholic, a devout of the Virgin, he happened to have 2 Jewish grandparents. And because of that, he was disqualified. That's very nasty stuff. Recently, just to show you that this will never die, or it doesn't die, in Spain, in Good Friday, last Good Friday, 10 days ago, in the ABC of Madrid, 450,000 in print and 3 million visits a day has the newspaper. It's a major newspaper, major newspaper. Reprinted, or not reprinted, printed an op-ed of an unknown person, because he doesn't even have his name, about that famous blood libel that during Holy Week or during Easter week, Jews will go out and kidnap Christian children to extract the blood to make matzahs for Passover. And the way it was written, you would think if something is happening today. It wasn't written in a way, well, that's an old story. No. It was written in a way that you would think it's happening today. In the ABC of Madrid, 10 days ago. Anybody would think that the entire country of Spain would have risen to condemn this. Nobody did. Nobody did. Then we go to the Iranian presence, because the Iranian presence in Latin America as a whole, it's one of the big disturbances that is happening in the area. They have brought their radical ideology, and that's why I say it's an evil experiment, because there seems to be a marriage between the extreme right, represented by the Iranians and their fascist type of style of government, and the extreme left. They got together and they said, well, the only thing that we all agree is that we have to bash Israel, we have to bash Zionism, and we have to bash the Jews. We have the situation, for example, in Latin America, many of the terrorist movements are not recognized as such. They are called resistant movements. So if Hezbollah or Al-Qaeda or Boko Haram from Africa, they come to Venezuela, they are recognized as freedom fighters, as a resistance movement, and given the aid that those kind of groups deserve. In Argentina, we all know that what happened with the AMIA bombing. Well, the AMIA bombing situation hasn't been resolved yet. And last year, 2012, Argentina signed a letter of intent, a protocol with the Iranians supposedly to solve the case and to establish a truth commission. Well, so far the commission hasn't even been named. Nothing is happening. And as a matter of fact, just to show you how they do things, just last year, Ahmad Vahidi, who was the mastermind of the AMIA bombing, that was then, I don't know if it still is, at least he was then Minister of Defense of Iran, went to Bolivia to the inauguration of a defense institute for the ALBA countries. Iran is spending a lot of money in Latin America. They even have a television station in Spanish. It's called Hispan TV, that spews venom every year. There's another problem there, which is institutional takeover. Institutional takeover, I mean the taking over of Arab institutions, mainly Christian institutions, in Latin America that are being taken over by the radical element and converted them to anti-Semitism, Christian communities. Remember, 100 years ago, Christians were 26% of the population of the Arab world. 26%. Today, 3% at best. Where are they gone? They're gone all over the place. Just like the Jews at one time had a diaspora, well, the Christians had a diaspora also from the Arab world, and many of them went to Latin America. We have them all over the place, and we love them. Hard-working people, nice. Their institutions are being targeted by the radical element, and they're being taken over. I don't say that the governments haven't done anything. They have. The Parlatino, which is the Latin American parliament, adopted a comprehensive declaration against anti-Semitism. But I wish that would become law one day. Why law? Because I believe that, and I think most of the panel will agree with me, that the only answer to this situation, and with this I will finish, is education and legislation. Why education is easy to understand, but why legislation? Because legislation means that you have, after you enact the legislation, you have to train the police, you have to train the district attorneys, the judges, to actually recognize that crime and how to prosecute it and how to go about it. That's why legislation is important. If we don't have those two things, education and legislation, we're not going to succeed, at least in Latin America, in doing this. Okay, I'm going to stop now, And then I will wait for the question. Thank you very much.